Hundreds of thousands of people in Hong Kong packed the streets to watch the annual New Year's night parade at the iconic Victoria Harbour. With dining culture so important here in China, we visit a finishing school which teaches proper etiquette to people in our New Year, New Life series. UN Arab League Special Envoy to Syria, Lakhdar Brahimi, meets the head of Syria's main opposition to discuss its bid for dialogue with the Syrian government. And the scandal is spreading and spreading fast. French retailers pull out products from the shelves as the country's government launches an inquiry into the horse meat contamination. It is noon here in Beijing. News Hour here on CCTV News. 60 minutes of the best stories from China and around the world. My name is Saka Jacob. We'd like to take this opportunity to wish all our viewers in China and around the world a very, very happy New Year. Now, let's talk about celebrations, not just here on the mainland, but also in Hong Kong, where the biggest feature of New Year celebrations is the New Year's night parade, which happens on the first day of the New Year from the iconic Victoria Harbour. Now, this year it featured more than 35 groups from 14 countries and regions, and that provided a festive atmosphere to more than 120,000 people who had gathered to partake in the festivities.
Dressed in gold-trimmed Chinese New Year costumes, these 5 Disney characters are leading a dance with the audience. The gold and red Chinese lanterns symbolize prosperity and good fortune for the year ahead. With flowers, butterflies, and giant insects. Australia's Empress Dudong is dazzling with its colorful garden. The excellent magic show and acrobatics are breaking time performances. The performers began their final rehearsal 8 hours before the parade, and they danced nearly 2 hours in the chilly cold wind last night. But even though they were still enjoying the parade,
we're so happy and excited. We have so much energy to be in Hong Kong. It's such a special delight for us.
All the 13 floats are commercial promotions representing each sponsor, but this kind of advertisement has been welcomed in the parade for 18 years.
I was so excited. I've never visited before in this country, and I actually hope I never have to leave again. Okay. The parade was excellent.
The Lunar New Year celebration events have successfully begun. On the evening of the second day of Lunar New Year, there will be a fantastic fireworks show at Victoria Harbour. And on the third day morning, people will go to the hockey club to enjoy horse racing. So many activities held in Hong Kong during Lunar New Year. So wait to meet you this time next year in Hong Kong. Jinjiabo, CCTV, Hong Kong.
From Hong Kong to Beijing, not to be left behind, the capital, of course, has its own traditions to celebrate Chinese New Year, one of which is temple fairs. It's a tradition that dates more than 1,000 years, as far back as the Liao dynasty. It can be held as monthly or possibly even one-off events, but it is always a part of Spring Festival. Now, millions of visitors go to enjoy folk performances, enjoy the tasty snacks that are on offer, and also to try and see the handicrafts that are on display. Now, one of these is the art of clay masks, as our Li Ying explains in this story.
The temple fair in Beijing's Taoranting Park. Hundreds of clay masks are on display. They are drawn from Peking opera and become a hallmark Chinese traditional culture. 30-year-old Lin Honghui is a 5th-generation inheritor of the art.
This is one of my mother's masterpieces. She is so keen on the art. She has been doing it for more than 30 years.
Tong Xiufen, Lin's mother, has made more than 100,000 masks like this. She can create more than 400 different types of masks and has prevented many of them from disappearing. Tong learned the art in her 20s.
I learned it just out of my interest. It is difficult to paint at first. The most difficult part is the eyes. You have to keep them in balance. My teacher told me that my technique was good. That encourages me.
Producing the masks is a delicate and complicated process. It starts with drawing an outline of the face, and then pigments are added. They represent the different temperaments of the characters. Red is a symbol of loyalty, white a symbol of bad faith, while silver and gold represent power. It may take several days to complete a single item, but each one is a joy for its creator. Here, CCTV.
Now, while many people return home to celebrate Spring Festival together with their families as an integral part of the celebrations, some folks have to do work during the holiday, including me. Now, particularly so for those who work in the service industry, who are even busier than usual during the time of festivities. And our reporter Hu Chao spoke to a chef at one restaurant to find out what his New Year wish is.
It's early in the morning, and the head chef is inspecting the supply of vegetables. This is Li Hongchun, who works at this popular restaurant in Taiyuan, capital of Shanxi province. Li Hongchun comes from Sichuan province. His parents still live in his hometown. The Spring Festival has become the busiest season for many restaurants in recent years. Li Hongchun hasn't been able to visit his parents during the holiday for more than 10 years.
Working in the catering industry, I hardly have time to spend with my family. I feel guilty about it, but my family understands my situation.
Li Hongchun specializes in making local Shanxi cuisine. This dish is called guoyou rou. It's made with stir-fried sliced pork and vegetables. And it's one of the most famous of Shanxi's dishes.
The secret is in the vinegar. It's especially delicious if you add some vinegar right at the end, when it's almost finished cooking.
Li Hongchun has worked in this restaurant for almost a decade and has been head chef for 6 years. His New Year wish is actually quite simple.
My New Year wish is just to have the chance to spend Spring Festival with my family. I also hope that customers can enjoy their meals at our restaurant.
Though busy at work, Li Hongchun can always find some time to leaf through a gourmet magazine. He says he's most interested in new ingredients and special cooking techniques. As a chef for more than 2 decades, Li Hongchun says he mustn't ever stop learning. And as the father of a teenage boy, he also expressed hope that his son will mark great achievements in the new year. Hu Chao, CCTV, Taiyuan, Shanxi province.
All right, now dining culture here in China, it's so important for Chinese people that having a meal with friends and loved ones is more than just about the eating. Choosing healthy food is at the core of good life, but the pleasures of eating not only comes from the food itself, but also the way in which one dines. So in our second episode of the New Year, New Life series, our reporter Hona went to a finishing school that teaches people the proper dining etiquette.
The art of fine dining is more complicated than it looks. Having an elegant afternoon tea is how Faye starts a perfect weekend. Like many of her 20-something friends, chatting while eating is a guilty pleasure. Now, she's found that pleasure in learning to eat gracefully.
I'll say a simple thing like wine glasses. Like when you are giving a toast or do a cheers with friends, you usually shouldn't be like hitting your glasses. You should just raise them up. It's a very simple thing, but actually no one really pays attention. No one actually knows how to do it in the proper way.
That's something she's learned from a finishing school that teaches high dining etiquette. Eating oysters without dirt in your mouth isn't always as easy as it sounds. Pasta and soup are the foods that need special attention.
In a city like Beijing, it's so easy to find cuisines from all over the world. But there's more to eating than just putting food in your mouth. Status-conscious Chinese want to do it in style.
Dining with all sorts of silverware was just one part of a 5-course European dinner. But eating Chinese food can be even more tricky if you're not careful enough. Sarah, the founder of the finishing school, has just started her businesses in China. She says she wants to change Chinese reputation of having more money than manners.
How to let my market understand that etiquette in finishing school is really, it's about self-cultivation, and you don't come to my school just to receive the vocational training.
Sarah says her timing was perfect. As China becomes more open, there is a growing demand for learning international dining etiquette. But taking up such a luxurious lifestyle comes with its cost. This company charges $16,000 for a 3-month hostess course for married women and $12,000 for a young lady course for the debutante.
Well, I think being beautiful is just not just about the outer look that you have, the appearance. I think it's also about bringing out the inner beauty that you have, knowing how to present yourself, knowing how to behave in front of a lot of people as China is becoming more international and culturally developed.
Faye says she found the event, as did others attending, mostly successful businesswomen, fun and informative. Learning what to do with a fish or butter knife will be crucial for many occasions. She enjoys the pleasure of eating not the food itself, but the confidence in knowing how to do it correctly and gracefully. Qmhana, CCTV, Beijing.
All right, now with its Pacific coastline and snowy mountains, Vancouver in the British Columbia has always been a popular place for a vacation. But in recent years, this Canadian city has also seen increased commercial success and the social benefits of becoming a multicultural society thanks to its vibrant Chinese community. Our correspondent Steve Lunt has a story from Vancouver.
Vancouver is now home to more than 400,000 Chinese people. It has the largest Chinatown in Canada. Almost 30% of the city's inhabitants have Chinese heritage. Only 13 hours flying time from Hong Kong, Vancouver is also the closest North American city to Asia. Since the 19th century, Vancouver has been enjoying the fruits of its close ties with China. The city has received substantial economic contributions and cultural benefits due to the philanthropy, investments and skills of industrious Chinese immigrants.
What are the main contributions of Chinese in Vancouver? I would say, as an academic, the first thing that comes to mind is the tremendous level of generosity and support for education in this region. Both UBC and Simon Fraser University have benefited tremendously from the generosity of Chinese in Vancouver.
In the mid-19th century, Chinese immigrants were attracted by British Columbia's gold rush. More than 6,000 Chinese workers also helped to build Canada's railway network, many of whom gave their lives to this project, which served to boost Vancouver's fortunes with a vital link to the rest of Canada. Chinese Canadians also gave their lives fighting for the Allied cause in World War II. The Canadian government has acknowledged its appreciation of the significant contributions made by those workers and soldiers. Wherever you look in Vancouver, the Chinese influence is evident. The obvious examples are in the city's countless Chinese restaurants. Chefs from China have helped Vancouver's cuisine to diversify and cater for a more varied banquet of Asian tastes. So critics now rate Vancouver's Chinese food to be among the world's finest. Perhaps less obviously, the city's outlook has also been changed.
Immigrants as a whole, but Chinese and immigrants in particular, I think have definitely changed the cultural landscape of Vancouver and just made it a much more multicultural, more diverse, more cosmopolitan and more global-minded city.
In the early 80s, Richmond was a somewhat sleepy suburb best known for its farmland and fishing village. But since then, Richmond has become North America's most Asian city, as 50% of the people living here are Chinese. And it's now a thriving centre of Oriental energy and dynamic commerce. Chinese investors have pumped new lifeblood into the economy here, especially with billions of dollars in real estate investments. Chinese property developers have reshaped Vancouver's urban skyline, transforming the city into Canada's most Asian metropolis. Vancouver's downtown areas now look like a mini Hong Kong, with shiny towers of luxury condos designed for affluent residents who can afford the million-dollar price tags. One of Vancouver's most popular attractions is this classical Chinese garden, the first of its kind outside China. It's an authentic representation of a 600-year-old garden tradition from the Ming dynasty. Built in the 1980s by more than 50 master craftsmen from China working alongside Canadian counterparts, the garden helps to promote cultural understanding between the Chinese and other communities living in Vancouver.
The garden here has between 5,000 and 8,000 children a year who come to take our programs. Probably the most popular is Chinese New Year's. We're teaching children, and not just Chinese kids, the traditions of Chinese New Year's and the storytelling around it, the good luck symbols. They sweep away the bad luck. It's really fun.
Speaking of luck, financial experts have recently noted the apparent correlation between China's economy and Vancouver's housing market. If there's growth in China, the property prices here tend to go up. So this Chinese New Year, Vancouver has more reasons to celebrate. With the growth in China's economy increasing again, that's likely to bring yet more good news for Vancouver. Steve Lunt, CCTV, Vancouver.
All right, from Vancouver to another fine global city, London, where the Chinese New Year celebrations have attracted huge crowds for what the organizers are calling the biggest party outside of Asia. Around 100,000 people turned out in what our London correspondent Richard Bestick calls typical English weather.
It was the heart of Chinese culture in the heart of London, watched by thousands in the wet, forming a sea of umbrellas. The extraordinary skills of the dragon dancers even riskier in the rain.
On any normal Sunday, I'd be standing in the middle of traffic here, but for Chinese New Year, the traffic's been expelled and replaced by thousands of people. And despite the rain, sometimes you can't stop a good party.
It's really good fun. It's a bit of a miserable day as usual, but no, it's been good. It's a good, nice atmosphere.
Brilliant. Amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. Just bussing everywhere. Everywhere we go, it's just bussing. It's fantastic.
Very good. Kong Hei Fat Choi.
It's probably the best Chinese New Year I've ever had. It's my first one.
If it's about boots on the ground, Chinese New Year in London defied the elements, while the great and the good and the dry were entertained on stage.
It's a special London weather at this time of the year, and I'm very pleased to see that Chinese New Year is not a Chinese New Year. It's really become, you call it a revel, carnival of the British people, Chinese people. It shows very closer cultural relations between China and Great Britain.
For decades now, Lunar celebrations have been expanding in London. Long ago, outgrowing Chinatown, they're now one of the UK capital's mainstream multicultural parties. Richard Bestick, CCTV, Trafalgar Square in London.
That's how Chinatown's become mainstream in London. Stay with us here on the News Hour. When we return, UN Arab League Special Envoy to Syria, Lakhdar Brahimi, has met the head of Syria's main opposition. They're discussing the possibility of a dialogue with the Syrian government. Could this lead to something? And the scandal is spreading and spreading fast. French retailers now pulling out their products from the shelves as the government there launches an inquiry into the horse meat scandal. Welcome back. The UN Arab League Special Envoy to Syria, Lakhdar Brahimi, has met with the head of Syria's main opposition in Cairo. The meeting discussed the Syrian National Coalition leader Muaz al-Khatib's recent suggestion for possibility of dialogue with the Syrian government. Now, after the meeting, Mr. al-Khatib released a statement online saying that he was willing to hold talks with President Bashar al-Assad or any representative of his in the rebel-held areas in northern Syria. He said the objective of these talks would be to try and find a way for Assad to leave power with the minimum amount of bloodshed and destruction. Now, earlier Sunday, Brahimi met with the Arab League Secretary-General Nabil al-Arabi, both of whom reaffirmed their support for the opposition's initiative to try and start a dialogue with the government. The Syrian conflict was also a major topic in the recent Islamic Cooperation Organization summit that was held in Cairo. The concluding statement of that two-day summit supported the initiative of Egypt, Iran, Turkey and Saudi Arabia to reach an earnest dialogue between the Syrian government and the exiled opposition coalition. Iran's President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says he's ready to have direct talks with the United States, but only based on justice and respect, not on pressure and imposition. Ahmadinejad made these comments at a rally marking the anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution after Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei effectively closed the door on direct talks with Washington as long as sanctions against Iran remained in place. The United States recently has been calling for direct talks with Iran, but Ahmadinejad told the rally that that was simply not good enough.
I say this candidly. The improvement in the United States' remarks and their way of talking is necessary, but it is not enough. When the US pulls away the gun from the face of the Iranian nation, I will talk to the US in person. Dialogue should be based on justice and respect, not on pressure and imposition. We are already nuclear, so what is the US's confrontation with us supposed to mean? Efforts by the US were intended not to allow us to go nuclear, but we did. Now is not the time for conflict and confrontation. The best way forward for the US and us is interaction and cooperation. This is better for the US. Everyone would benefit from cooperation, but the US would lose if confrontation happens.
Troops in Mali have battled jihadist insurgents in Gao in a 2-hour firefight before receiving assistance from French forces. Now, this firefight surprised the Malian army a couple of weeks after they thought they had ousted the jihadists with the help of the French military. Now, this attack foreshadows a protracted campaign by France as well as other countries to try and restore government control in Mali. Now, ever since the French forces took the town, extremists have clashed with security forces on the outskirts of Gao, but this is the first time that they have succeeded in entering the heart of the city. Besides Gao, French and Malian forces have also retaken Timbuktu, pushing the extremists back into the desert, where they pose a constant threat to both Malian as well as allied forces. The government of Sudan and a splinter faction of the Justice and Equality Movement have signed an official ceasefire agreement in Doha, the capital of Qatar. Now, according to this agreement, the Sudanese government as well as the Justice and Equality Movement will stop all forms of violence. They will continue negotiations on unsettled differences between both sides. Major rebels in the Darfur region include the Sudan Liberation Army, the Justice and Equality Movement, and the Liberation and Justice Movement. Now, back in July of 2011, the Sudanese government had officially signed an agreement of peace with the Liberation and Justice Movement, but negotiations with the Sudan Liberation Army have made little progress whatsoever. The King of Jordan has inaugurated the country's newly elected parliament with a pledge to press ahead with democratization. But he says he will help pick the next prime minister, a job which is currently solely in the hands of lawmakers. King Abdullah promoted this year's January 23rd election as a milestone in reforms that he initiated a couple of years ago to prevent a large-scale unrest. He recently suggested the new legislature would have more powers to run the daily affairs of the state as the monarchy takes a step back. But in a speech to lawmakers at the inauguration of the 17th Parliament, King Abdullah said that the Prime Minister will now be chosen under the supervision of the palace.
We will start this new approach by consulting with the lower house and other parliamentary blocs over the government's formation. We will do this in order to reach a consensus over the designation of a Prime Minister, who in turn will enter into consultations with the parliamentary blocs and other political forces as he selects his ministerial team. He will then seek the lower house's confidence based on a policy statement.
All right, time now to talk business, and Jinfeng now joins us. I'm just wondering, if markets across much of Asia are shut, why are you working?
I just hope to start the year as soon as possible because early birds will catch us warm, so I may get more of a kind of a luck or fortune for the new year.
Okay, good luck to you.
Well, as Jack has said, most Asian markets are closed today, including Chinese mainland markets, Tokyo and Hong Kong. So we turn our eyes to Europe. The Europe-wide scandal of horse meat sold as beef is spreading, with leading French retailers now pulling products from their shelves. The government is promising to publish the results of inquiry within days. Robert Farr has more details.
Europe's horse meat scandal is spreading and threatening cross-border tensions. France says Romanian butchers and Dutch Cypriot traders are part of a supply chain that has resulted in horse meat disguised as beef being sold in frozen lasagna around the continent. Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius says an investigation is needed and there will be strong sanctions against those found responsible.
Not only do we need an investigation, but there will be sanctions. It's terrible. Let's imagine a family talking about this around the table. One would say it's disgusting because consumers are not responsible for this. They buy a product and they're given some old bad meat, if I understand correctly. There are certainly people who make profit out of this, so traceability is needed, and that is what the French government proposes. And he is right, and we need sanctions, strong sanctions.
France's junior minister for consumer goods, Benoît Hamon, says the motivation for passing off horse meat as beef appears to be financial, and authorities are concentrating on pursuing anyone guilty of fraud in the affair. French supermarkets have recalled a raft of pre-prepared meals, including lasagna, moussaka and cannelloni suspected of containing undeclared horse meat. An affair that started earlier this year with worries about horse meat in burgers in Ireland and Britain is now spreading into a Europe-wide scandal. Horse meat is largely taboo in Britain and some other countries, although in France it is sold in specialty butcher shops and prized by some connoisseurs. Robert Farr, CCTV.
Poor horses. Facing French accusations, Romania is scrambling to salvage the reputation of its food industry. The Agriculture Ministry says the government has started an investigation to see whether any horse meat comes from Romania.
I've asked for a report, and I don't want to comment before the president of a sanitary veterinary authority presents it to me. I hope to receive it today, and after that, I will be able to give you more details. I hope to identify those exporters as soon as possible. In the end, it is a matter of products control here, before they left for other EU markets.
Here's another dispute on trade of meat. A Russian ban on U.S. meat imports goes into effect on Monday. Russia announced in January that it would temporarily stop importing all U.S. beef and pork products on February the 11th over concerns about the use of the food addictive ractopamine. The drug is banned in many countries, including Russia, China and the European Union, because of concerns that residues could remain in the meat and cause health problems. A spokesman from the U.S. Trade Representative's office in Moscow has objected to Russia's decision, saying it threatened to undermine the bilateral trade relationship. The U.S. says the ban could affect about $500 million in annual sales. Now to the U.S. U.S. President Barack Obama is expected to focus on the ongoing battle in the Congress over the budget cuts, the U.S. economy and jobs during his upcoming State of the Union address. He will deliver the speech Tuesday night, and it will also be a chance for the President to lay out his second-term agenda. Brian Moore has details.
The economy, jobs and the middle class are expected to be center stage Tuesday night as President Obama delivers his fourth State of the Union address. While foreshadowing his second-term agenda, the president will also be trying to take the high ground from Republicans in the fight over budget cuts.
They'd rather ask more from the vast majority of Americans and put our recovery at risk than close even a single tax loophole that benefits the wealthy.
The president and Democrats are demanding what they see as a fair balance.
So what we do need is more revenue and more cuts. What I would like to see that is in a big, balanced, bold proposal.
If there's no deal by March 1st, deep, automatic spending cuts kick in.
These indiscriminate reductions do not make sense, and we're going to hurt a lot of people, and it's up to the president really to act now.
But not everyone believes those across-the-board cuts, known as the sequester, could hurt the economy.
The president's now caterwauling about the sequester. So are many Republicans. Tea Party people are saying the sequester's a pittance.
Our journey moves forward. On Tuesday night, President Obama will have his say from the nation's biggest bully pulpit. After his speech, President Obama will take his case to the people, visiting Asheville, North Carolina, Atlanta, and Chicago. Brian Moore, CCTV, Washington.
Now let's get back to China. As the country continues to modernize, there have been countless attempts to ensure that ancient traditions survive in the country's fast-changing society. One woman from China's southwest Guizhou province has not only found a way to have traditions thrive in a modern society, she's also helping alleviate poverty. Our reporter Fei Ye tells us her story.
Tucked in the most remote area of Guizhou province in southwest China, these Miao women spend their days taking care of their families, leaving very little time for anything else.
My husband works really far away, so I can't leave my home. So I wanted to find a job that allowed me to stay here, and I wanted to be trained in wax painting. Before, I didn't have time to do anything like this, but after being trained, I was able to revive our traditions.
Their training is organized by Gen Silk National Culture Investment Company. The aim is to preserve the Miao culture, traditions, and help sell their work across China to give them a stable income. This is Yu Ying, founder of the company. She says the reason she chose to establish her base in Danzhai County was because it is one of the poorest counties in the province, but with the best preserved local culture.
Before we came, this place didn't have any industry. Villagers didn't have a stable income. They were eager to change that situation, but they had no choice other than working as cheap laborers. The tradition of the Miao ethnic group were preserved quite well in this county, so we chose Danzhai County.
What Yu Ying is doing in Danzhai County is another kind of social business. We can call it 公平贸易, that is fair trade. Fair trade is a new business model. It's help the poor farmers and help them to sell their products in the developed markets.
Yu combines their handmade crafts, such as embroidery, wax painting, and tie-dyeing with modern products, such as handbags and clothing, to make it appeal more to a high-end market. It wasn't all easy in the beginning to set up the base in Danzhai County. It took Yu a lot of effort to persuade the husbands to allow their wives to work.
We first had to convince the village head. Then he went to convince the core members of the village. Then the radio would broadcast telling all the men to support their wives if their wives had been chosen to learn embroidery. If they didn't let the woman go, the village might not take the family in consideration when there are nice deals around. The way we convinced them was a bit threatening at first, but eventually they realized the benefits of our efforts.
There has been significant amount of changes these women were able to experience through their training with Yu's organization, such as change in their hygiene, boost in their self-confidence, and most importantly, change the way they view their culture.
We tell them we have to bring back the traditions. These kind of patterns are beautiful and will attract the outsiders, which will eventually result in more purchases and more income for them. This was a slow process to make them understand the value of their culture. When we started our program, a lot of them didn't know how to draw anymore, so we usually start with the older women who can draw and then slowly integrate to the younger ones. Before, when she drew the head of the bird, it wasn't round and the tail was straight. But then the older ladies taught her, and now she's great at it.
The women's incomes have risen from a few hundred RMB to about 2,000 RMB a month. After training, when patterns and sewing techniques have been determined, you prefer the women to do their work at home so they can be close to their children.
The women have to take care of the elderly, the kids, the house, and all the work on the field. So when people say to me, you could just build a factory, but for this type of production, having a factory is not ideal, because these women can't leave their homes. They must be at home to do the work.
Now that I'm earning money, if my child wants to buy clothes or need money for school, it's convenient for me to pay. I don't have to ask my husband for money.
You didn't just change their aesthetics, but also gave them respect and appreciation from other family members. The women's social statuses have risen, which was accomplished with working, communicating, and understanding each other.
We didn't come here to do charity. We came to develop with you. Many people donate things to the countryside, including clothes and money. But we try to let the locals know that they can make money on their own.
The understanding of a social business in China is still relatively new and is something more and more social entrepreneurs are dwelling with. You said the future of China is to preserve its traditions, and it requires the next generation to fully understand the concept of a social business, something she will dedicate her future for. I'm Fei Ye in Guizhou for CCTV News.
That's a touching story, and that's the business update. I'm Chun Junfeng, handing back to Zaka.
All right, thanks very much. We'll see you again at 4 o'clock. BizAsia with a market close, not here in Asia, of course, but in other parts of the world. Stay with us here on the News Hour. When we return, all the sporting action, including two-time champions Nigeria beating Burkina Faso in the finals of the African Cup of Nations. They're now back as the sporting powerhouse in all of Africa. And the northeast of the United States just begins digging itself out of the heavy snowfall over the weekend, in which 11 people are dead and hundreds of thousands of homes are still without electricity 3 days after that snowfall. Stay with us. The News Hour's back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. Today is the second day of the Chinese Spring Festival, and in Shenyang, which is in northeast China's Liaoning province, an ice and snow festival is being held, giving people there a chance for some outdoor fun. For more on this, we can cross over to our reporter Guanyang, joining us live from Shenyang. First of all, Happy New Year to you, Guanyang. Tell us, what are you seeing around you? How are people having fun there?
Hello, Zaka. Happy Lunar New Year. As you said, it's the second day into the Year of Snake, and people are already coming out to enjoy the Ice and Snow Festival after the family reunion, and of course, watching the Spring Festival Gala. I must say, in the Northeast, because the winter is extremely cold, so we don't usually have as many outdoor activities as other parts of the country have. But the Snow Ice and Festival is the most unique and dynamic way of celebration. Now, the Shenyang Ice and Snow Festival combines recreation, sports, and the sightseeing. It depends on the weather. The festival can last for up to 1 month during the period from December to February. And if you are fond of ski, then this is the right place for you. You can see in the alpine skiing area, people are making some spectacular maneuvers. And this place also provides opportunity to discover this splendid nature surroundings. And it's very convenient, since all the runways are served by cable lifts that get access to the top of the mountain, and there's no need to bring your own equipment. And so just come and have a good time, and there's no better way to slide out the old year than this. Back to you, Zaka.
I can see a lot of skiers in the background, but other than that, what else can you do in all that ice and snow?
Yes, the Shenyang Ice and Snow Festival contains 3 sections. The alpine skiing section that I already mentioned. The other 2 are the ice and snow sculpture and entertainment areas. Visitors can admire all the ice carvings and the snow sculptures that are strikingly true to life. And for instance, grand and imposing images of animals, portraits, and places. And for enthusiastic photographers, they can get great views from big balloons that are drifting from the sky. And finally, in the entertainment area, and there will be a wide variety of events like ice golfing, racing, and the football on the snow. So the Spring Festival each year is indeed the most important event for family reunion. But why not take your family out to spend some quality time in the ice northeast? Back to you, Zaka.
Why not? Thanks very much for joining us. Guanyang, live from Shenyang there from the Ice and Snow Festival. I'm sure he'll indulge in some skiing of his own. Meanwhile, from northeast China to the southern part of the country, where golden snub-nosed monkeys, they've inhabited the wild forests of southern China for a very long time. But all this while, the life pattern of these monkeys has remained a mystery to the outside world. That is, up until now, because thanks to the hard work of explorers from the Shennongjia Nature Reserve, we now know much, much more.
8 years ago, explorers marched far into the mountainous forests of the Shennongjia Natural Reserve, tracking signs of the golden snub-nosed monkey. At around 2,000 meters above sea level, an altitude where golden monkeys usually live, explorers searched for a trace of their trail for several days. But those mysterious creatures remained elusive.
You can track them through extremely careful observation, observing the small clues the monkey left you. Broken twigs, branches, and torn pine cones on the ground might show you the route that they passed.
In May 2005, explorers finally spotted a group of golden monkeys.
The first sighting was on the 2nd of May, a group consisting of more than 100 monkeys.
The next challenge was how to stalk them. Considering their capricious life pattern and secret tracks, getting close to them required painstaking efforts.
We found them, we got to know their territory and daily routine. We were trying to get familiar with them and let them become accustomed to us.
Stalking the golden monkey was very much like a game of hide and seek. Sometimes the monkeys faded in and out of sight in a matter of seconds, and other times they just disappeared without a trace. So in the first 7 months, the only way for the explorers to stalk the monkey was to literally follow after them, often meaning long stays in camp.
The longest period living in tents was 2 months.
After a few months of watching, monkeys found that the newcomers never hurt them, nor did they feel any hostility. They gradually began to drop their guard. Noticing this change, the explorers began their next trial, feeding them food.
The monkeys at first didn't even know what we were giving them was food, and they remained very wary to things they didn't know.
The monkeys took no notice of the carrots and apples offered by explorers, so the explorers used a special tactic.
The main food that the golden snub-nosed monkey tends to eat is a kind of grass named Androsachi henri, so we used this to cover the fruit. It worked. First they ate the grass, then the fruit. Then they got used to them.
Now, the Yunnan golden hair monkey, it's under state protection. It's as precious as the pandas of Sichuan. Let's try and find out more about these species.
The black snub-nosed monkey is an endangered primate species. It is endemic to China, where it is known to the locals as the Yunnan golden hair monkey. The monkey is threatened by habitat loss. There's a troop of 60 black snub-nosed monkeys living in the Baima Shuishan Nature Preserve in Yunnan province. The troop is made up of 8 families. Each family has several members, and only one adult male can be the leader of the family. This alpha male has many female partners to help continue the family line. The alpha male is usually a militant type. It has a fighting nature and uses violence to get what it wants.
One adult male becomes the leader. Defeating other families and possessing their females are the aims of each alpha male monkey after it grows up.
The polygamous family structure dictates that only the most dauntless monkey can be the leader of the family. Family leaders are usually very serious and have a bad temper. Any offensive action could ignite the alpha male's temper, bringing a violent punishment. Zhongtai says the monkey's social structure is very critical and useful for the evolution of the species. Only the strongest one has the right to mate with the females in order to keep the continuation of the species. These monkeys build a society in which the strongest dominates. There exists one unique family in the reserve. The alpha male in this family is not as brutal and warlike as the others. He treats his family members mildly and considerately, so much so that many females like to throw themselves into his arms. The director says that it would normally be impossible for this kind of monkey to become the leader without getting into bloody fights. But this special monkey has done so, and this phenomena is quite rare. The director has designated this unique monkey as the main object of study. The monkey is called Q.N.N because of his mild nature. But most alpha male monkeys are not like Q.N.N. It may be difficult to find another merciful leader in the region.
All right, from snub-nosed monkeys to sport now, and David joins us. We've got new African champions in football.
I thought you were going to say to a snub-nosed presenter there for a minute after. Where's this going? Yeah, we've got plenty to round up from the weekend, not least China's superstar Mang Weng broke the 500-metre world record at the latest round of the Speed Skating World Cup in Germany. She smashed the world's best time in her semi-final. The time was 42.597. So Wang full of confidence as she goes into the final here. She was joined by Fang Kexing and Lu Kuchong in the final. Wang continued her dominance in this event, taking her 6th World Cup race. No record this time, but a comprehensive victory and a wonderful weekend for her. Canada's Marianne St. Gallat, 2nd. Lu Qihuang was 3rd. Now, the men's 500-metre rising star Luang Wenhao and Wu Deijing swept both gold and silver. Liang took the crown in a time of 41.049, winning his 2nd race at this stop in Dresden and his 3rd overall World Cup success. Speaking of success, Nigeria are celebrating after winning the Africa Cup of Nations final in Johannesburg. They beat Burkina Faso by a 0-0. It's their 3rd continental title. Nigeria proved too strong against a workmanlike Burkina Faso, who were out-muscled and out-sprinted. They never really looked like repeating the heroics that got them to the final. 5 minutes before half-time, a botched clearance fell perfectly to Sunday Umba. The Nigerian midfielder conjured up a little bit of brilliance by flicking the ball over the head of a defender and slamming it into the net. The celebrations began 1-0 to Nigeria. The Super Eagles continued to attack and Burkina Faso were pegged back into their own half for most of the match. There were chances for the underdog. Wilfried Sanu's shot, a snap effort, ran just across the face of the goal, but 1-0 was how it finished, and Nigeria lapping up that success, following on from two previous championships in 1980 and 1994.
I was praying to God before I came to this tournament that hopefully this will be my last and I'm going to win it, and God gave me that, so I'm very delighted and I feel so blessed.
Me winning the cup as first Nigerian coach to win it, I want to dedicate this to all Nigerian coaches that have been praying for this team. It's not for me alone, but I hope some other African coaches will get to this position and make their nation proud.
Barcelona hosted Getafe in Spain's La Liga on the first day of the Chinese New Year, the year of the snake. Looks like it's going to be another championship year for Barca, and they had a special message for the people of China. Before the start of the match, both captains came out accompanied by children wearing T-shirts for the new year. Reminders of the Chinese New Year were all around the Nou Camp. Barca playing their first game at noon in 48 years, 7 p.m, peak viewing in China. Let's pick up the action. Things going the Catalans' way from early on. Alexis Sanchez making it 1-0, beating the keeper easily. Lionel Messi, you can't keep him out of the headlines. He got his 35th goal of the season. Not one of his most spectacular, but they all count. And that was 2-0. And that was the score at half-time. The host didn't have to wait too long for the third. David Villa getting beyond the defence and putting Getafe in a bit of a hole. 3-0. Getafe did get a consolation, but goals from Tello, Andres Iniesta, here assisted by a lovely run from Messi. And the sixth came from Gerard Piqué. 6-1 the final score. Barca moved 12 points ahead of second-placed Atletico Madrid, who lost 2-1. Bit of a surprise to Rayo Vallecano. Former table tennis star Zhuang Zedong died in Beijing after a battle with cancer. He was 73. A multi-world championship winner, Zhuang is known for his role in diplomacy with the United States in the 1970s. Born in 1940, Zhuang started his table tennis career at the age of 14. The Yangzhou-born player won the World Men's Singles Championship 3 times between 61 and 75. And during the 1971 World Championships in Japan, Zhuang made friends with US player Glenn Cowan, and together they started the so-called ping-pong diplomacy, which eventually led to the normalization of Sino-US relations. And that's where we leave the sport for this hour. We'll be back a little bit later on.
All right, thanks very much, David, for the sports stories. Let's talk about the United States, what's happening there right now. The Northeast, at least, has just slowly begun digging itself out after a blizzard with hurricane-force winds dumped up to 1 meter of snow. In fact, in some places up to 1.5 meters, killing at least 11 people and leaving hundreds of thousands without power. Utility companies are now reporting that roughly 350,000 customers across 9 states in the Northeast are still without electricity. That number, though, is down from over 500,000 Saturday. Air traffic has also slowly started to return to normal after more than 5,000 flights were cancelled Friday and Saturday. Bradley International Airport in Connecticut and Long Island's MacArthur Airport have both now reopened. Meanwhile, the rail service provider Amtrak says it plans to run a limited service between New York and Boston starting Sunday. But the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, the Rhode Island Public Transport Authority and the Connecticut Transit all say that services will remain suspended. In fact, the United States is not alone in suffering from the blizzard. Neighbouring Canada has also seen heavy snowfall. And earlier we caught up with our correspondent Christian Yeo in Toronto, and he told us that the bitter weather has also turned deadly there, and there's more to come.
Many fatalities all over the northeast of the US and in Canada across the weekend. Some reports as many as 13 people died in total. and we're expecting more to come as well. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when this snow will fall, but it could come Monday night, could come Thursday and Sunday as well. And this is worrying because for the worst hit areas like Quebec, Nova Scotia and also south of the border in Boston and Connecticut, they're still dealing with the aftermath of last night's snowfall. So it seems like we're already playing catch up just as we're dealing with the snow that's already here. There's more on its way.
All right, bad weather across North America. Here in China, though, it's clear weather, and why not during the Spring Festival festivities right around this week. As we wrap up the News Hour, this Monday edition, we'll leave you with some special celebration shots from cities across China and how they welcomed the Year of the Snake. Enjoy this, and we'll catch you again tomorrow, same time, noon Beijing time, for 60 minutes of the best stories from China and right around the world. That's the News Hour. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time. Bye-bye.
In the chilly cold wind last night, but even though they were still enjoying the parade.
We're so happy and excited. We have so much energy to be in Hong Kong. It's such a special delight for us.
All the 13 floats are commercial promotions representing each sponsor, but this kind of advertisement has been welcomed in the parade for 18 years.
I was so excited. I've never visited before in this country, and I actually hope I never have to leave again. Okay. The parade was excellent.
The Lunar New Year celebration events have successfully begun. On the evening of the second day of Lunar New Year, there will be a fantastic fireworks show at Victoria Harbour. And on the third day morning, people will go to the hockey club to enjoy horse racing. So many activities held in Hong Kong during Lunar New Year. So wait to meet you this time next year in Hong Kong. Jin Jiabo, CCTV, Hong Kong.
Well, from Hong Kong to Beijing, not to be left behind, the capital, of course, has its own traditions to celebrate Chinese New Year, one of which is temple fairs. It's a tradition that dates more than 1,000 years as far back as in Hong Kong, where the biggest feature of New Year celebrations is the New Year's Night Parade, which happens on the first day of the New Year from the iconic Victoria Harbour. Now, this year it featured more than 35 groups from 14 countries and regions, and that provided a festive atmosphere to more than 120,000 people who had gathered to partake in the festivities.
Dressed in gold-trimmed Chinese New Year costumes, these 5 Disney characters are leading a dance with the audience. The gold and red Chinese lanterns symbolize prosperity and good fortune for the year ahead. With flowers, butterflies, and giant insects. Australia's Empress Dance is dazzling with its colorful garden. The excellent magic show and acrobatics are breaking time performances. The performers began their final rehearsal 8 hours before the parade, and they danced nearly 2 hours.
Liao Dynasty. It can be held as monthly or possibly even one-off events, but it is always a part of Spring Festival. Now, millions of visitors go to enjoy folk performances, enjoy the tasty snacks that are on offer, and also to try and see the handicrafts that are on display. Now, one of these is the art of clay masks, as our Li Ying explains in this story.
The temple fair in Beijing's Taorenting Park. Hundreds of clay masks are on display. They are drawn from Peking opera and become a hallmark Chinese traditional culture. 30-year-old Lin Honghui is a 5th-generation inheritor of the art.
This is one of my mother's masterpieces. She is so keen on the art. She has been doing it for more than 30 years.
Tong Xiufen, Lin's mother, has made more than 100,000 masks like this. She can create more than 400 different types of masks and has prevented many of them from disappearing. Tong learned the art in her 20s.
I learned it just out of my interest. It is difficult to paint at first. The most difficult part is the eyes. You have to keep them in balance. My teacher told me that my technique was good. That encourages me.
Producing the masks is a delicate and complicated process. It starts with drawing an outline of the face, and then pigments are added. They represent the different temperaments of the characters. Red is a symbol of loyalty, white a symbol of bad faith, while silver and gold represent power. It may take several days to complete a single item, but each one is a joy for its creator. Here, CCTV.
Now, while many people return home to celebrate Spring Festival together with their families as an integral part of the celebrations, some folks have to do work during the holiday, including me. Now, particularly so for those who work in the service industry, who are even busier than usual during the time of festivities. And our reporter Hu Chao spoke to a chef at one restaurant to find out what his New Year wish is.
It's early in the morning, and the head chef is inspecting the supply of vegetables. This is Li Hongchun, who works at this popular restaurant in Taiyuan, capital of Shanxi province. Li Hongchun comes from Sichuan province. His parents still live in his hometown. The Spring Festival has become the
Hundreds of thousands of people in Hong Kong packed the streets to watch the annual New Year's Night Parade at the iconic Victoria Harbour. With dining culture so important here in China, we visit a finishing school which teaches proper etiquette to people in our New Year, New Life series. UN Arab League Special Envoy to Syria, Lakhdar Brahimi, meets the head of Syria's main opposition to discuss its bid for dialogue with the Syrian government. And the scandal is spreading and spreading fast. French retailers pull out products from the shelves as the country's government launches an inquiry into the horse meat contamination. It is noon here in Beijing. News Hour here on CCTV News. 60 minutes of the best stories from China and around the world. My name is Saka Jacob. We'd like to take this opportunity to wish all our viewers in China and around the world a very, very happy New Year. Now, let's talk about celebrations, not just here on the mainland, but also